all we're seeing are the extreme outliers typically. That's typically who makes it up on the stage, or that's typically why they're there, is that they're the outliers. And so it definitely lends itself to believing that there's some sort of magical element that they have that
Mm.
we don't have. And the magical element is probably the knee-jerk reaction way back at the beginning to become obsessed with that thing. It's like you said, for whatever reason, you rewound Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, and you watched it immediately another time.
Hmm.
I didn't
Yeah.
have that reaction to it. So
Yeah.
so I'm probably not gonna be selected to play young Jim Carrey in the biopic.
One less person for me to be in competition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you really could have been the guy.
Might be. Anytime I see or hear the name Bumblebee Tuna, I think of that great classic film, Ace Ventura 2,
Yeah,
When Nature Calls. Is that? Yeah, that's right. That's the second one.
it was a classic.
Honestly, that
Guano. I
is
feel like there was something about guano in that.
yes, guano bowls. Collect the whole set. That is the only movie that in my entire life I've ever. So I'm old enough that I had it on VHS. Movie got over. I was sitting there just in tears laughing. Hit rewind, watched the whole thing over again.
Oh,
Didn't
really?
even leave the room.
It wasn't that good, was it?
When I was a kid, one of my dreams was that
You had
someday
low
they were gonna make.
standards.
That's probably true. Also, it was the '90s. That's what movies were like too, at least the ones I
I
was
know.
watching. I watch a lot of movies from that era now. I say watch, or rather think about or see scenes from, and I go like, how are we accepting this as entertainment? We
Yeah.
paid money to go see this in the theater. But when I was a kid, one of my dreams was that someday they would make a Jim Carrey biopic, and I would get the role of young Jim Carrey. I would play Jim Carrey as a child.
Okay.
I was kind of doing research by watching Jim Carrey movies.
I wouldn't rule out a Jim Carrey biopic, but I think it's gonna be a while.
I know. In my mind, the dude was already really old. Surely it was going to happen very soon.
Yeah. There's also the Adam Sandler inverted sandwich effect. You know what I'm talking about?
Talk to me about it.
So, see, it's the the Adam Sandler effect, and my wife begrudgingly agrees with me on this.
Mm.
Maybe not the entire sandwich, but when we were kids, we loved the Adam Sandler movies and
Of
all the
course. Yeah.
tapes, Happy Gilmore and
Singing
everything.
Lunch Lady Land every day at school. Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And then I think when you hit, I don't know, college maybe, you become too sophisticated for Adam Sandler movies, and it lasts for a while. But now, if there's an Adam Sandler movie marathon on, I just sit down and I'm happy to watch the whole thing because they're like therapeutically like
Right, yeah.
excellent, excellent films.
Do you think that's a nostalgia thing, or do you think it's something special about the quality of Adam Sandler films?
I think it's something special about the quality of Adam Sandler films.
Do you think maybe what was a criticism with being that he essentially plays the same character in every single show he's ever in is actually a strength that makes it's consistent, and so we feel comforted by the fact that
Yeah.
we can come back every time it's always him?
I think Just Go With It is some of the finest comedic writing of all time. I don't know. I can't really explain why, but it's a true fact.
Hmm.
Both that movie is the greatest comedic movie of all time, but also that, maybe it's after you have kids.
Oh, yeah.
Once you've realized unequivocally that you are unsophisticated, you're allowed to let yourself like Sandler movies again, and they turn out that they're the best movies.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, we become less full of ourselves. Those college years, that's when you think, oh, maybe I'm becoming something special. And then once you accept that you're not, you can go back to enjoying Adam Sandler movies.
I think that I've become something special, but not that special, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny that maybe you like him so much in part, and I was definitely immersed in Jim Carrey movies when I was a kid, and Adam Sandler and the rest of that.
I think I see
ilk
where
as
you're
well.
going with this.
Do you
I think I
do you
might
see where I'm
see where
going
you're
with
going.
it?
You tried to sneak that by me.
I could have. I still could probably quote just about every line from specifically Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, but also most of the Jim Carrey movies that came out in that era, and for that matter, many of the Adam Sandler movies as well. I mean, Happy Gilmore, we could probably go line for line back and forth, you and I, right now.
I've lost a lot of it, Jim. I
Mm,
used to be able to do the entire Lord of the Rings extended edition, start to finish, line for line.
yeah.
I can't really do it anymore. I lost it.
What if we got you immersed in the Lord of the Rings once again? Do you think maybe after a couple weeks of immersion, you'd be able to do it line for line
Yeah,
again
I do.
and start coming back?
I think so.
And maybe it's important too to know that like it's not like you'd have to be sitting there looking at our younger years, for example. I was never sitting there watching an Adam Sandler or Jim Carrey movie with a notebook and being like, I must memorize that line and then repeating it over and over again or something like that.
Yeah.
It happened naturally.
How do I memorize Ace Ventura? I can't. No
Been
matter what
working
I
on Ace
do,
Ventura for years.
no matter what I do, I just can't memorize Ace Ventura.
What does he say about Slinkies again? I can't remember.
Oh, I just can't remember no matter how I try. And it's like, maybe the problem is that you're trying to memorize it. Why do you think it is? I mean, so we're talking about memorizing your favorite movies. Why do you think it is that most of us have at least a couple movies, which is like a 90-minute script, and you honestly like legit kind of have it memorized, right? Why?
Yeah.
How did that happen so easily? But a 2-minute bagpipe tune is such a struggle.
Yeah. Oh man, if I could log away 90 minutes of bagpipe music as easily as I logged away the first 12 seasons of The Simpsons, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, and then when you look at the really top bagpipers, they have thousands of tunes at their beck and call.
Yeah.
At any given moment, right? Like I could probably easily play you well over 1,000 tunes from memory right now with no mistakes, and probably a couple thousand more with just a quick refresher.
Yeah, you got to hear the first 2 bars or something, and then you'd be good to go, right?
And maybe we have a movie or two that we kind of like really know, but there's some people that know every line from every movie, or they know everything about pop culture, and you're always kind of amazed by these people, but like, how do they do it?
How does that happen? Yeah.
What's the secret? Are they sitting there taking notes? Are they genetically predisposed to soak in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective?
Yeah, maybe there's a gene marker for that.
Maybe there is.
It's embedded on the Y chromosome, I suspect.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if something in there. Or is it something that we do that allows this sort of thing to take place? Is it something that we do kind of naturally?
Yeah. I mean, there are strategies, of course, that we can put into place to memorize tunes, and I'm not saying that they're not functional, but it's a different kind of memorization that I at least experience when it's a tune that is played by one of my favorite artists, and so I've been listening to it for a long time, or just a song that I like and I've heard it from multiple artists, and that gets into my head and into my bones in a way that's very different from when I'm handed a march at the beginning of the year by a pipe major and told, learn this tune. Maybe by the end of the season, if I'm really into that tune, it'll kind of approach the same kind of degree of being in my bones, but it feels like a different thing, you know?
Totally. I mean, I think it's a matter of knowing it. It's a matter of getting to know it and understanding it. And I always say this, and I still say this. This is like an old dojo line that still I say it all the time. By the time you've learned a tune correctly, and maybe I should change it to by the time you really know the tune, you'll already have it memorized. Here's another analogous illustration of it. You know how to get from your house to your grandma's house, let's say. I've known it my whole life, right? But have you ever tried to write it down so somebody else can get to grandma's house? It's a much different
exercise. Yeah.
It's a much different experience. And then you can do it, by the way. You can totally do it. But you have to sit down and you're like, wow, okay. There's a lot of details in there that I just know that if someone doesn't just know those details, you have to be very specific and careful about how you do it. Another one would be writing out a recipe for something that you make. You know, that's something you know how to make. Like, how do you make a hamburger? It wouldn't be that hard if you know the person that takes the recipe has a lot of experience with recipes. But imagine someone has no experience with recipes. Even making a hamburger would be a pretty complex list of instructions.
Yeah.
Right? So if you wanted someone to be successful making your hamburger recipe, the better they were at making food generally to begin with, the better the result is likely to be, because they've spent time with recipes. And then it's like, okay, take 2 pieces of bread. And they know that they should open up the bun. You don't have to explain that.
Maybe very importantly, they'll know when the meat is properly cooked and not over or under cook it. They'll just know.
Totally.
Won't need to give them an exact temperature and an exact amount of time.
Yes. How did they make that cheese sauce without doing a roux? You know, like, to ask that question is it's a huge advantage, right? Or one of the damn peak things. So whenever they make the meringues on TV and they're like, You got to
Oh,
whip the
yeah.
eggs until there's peaks or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know
Right.
what the hell that means. But my wife absolutely knows. She's like, yeah, it's peaks, bro. There's a different level of knowledge, like background knowledge and understanding
Right.
there.
Yeah.
That's really
Phrases
important.
like you could say caramelize your onions before putting one in. Only an insider
Right.
would know what the heck you're talking about. If they didn't have experience cooking stuff, they'd be like,
And now explain to me, let's pretend I don't have any idea what that is. Explain to me what caramelizing an onion is.
yeah, that becomes tricky because I could say
It's pretty
you
tricky.
heat it, but it's like how long do you heat it? How high do you turn the temperature? And how do you know when it's finished? And you try to describe. It's not just the way the onions look. It's kind of like the amount of floppiness they gain as well. There's all
Yeah.
kinds of little things that, without having your hands on it previously yourself. Yeah, I see what you're
Caramelized onion
saying.
it's a beautiful example though too, Jim, because like when you have
Mm.
when you have some caramelized onions,
You never
you
have one
imme-
caramelized onion.
I know you can't. When you have them though, you immediately understand.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh, I now completely understand
Mm.
why this is so important in the world because
Yeah.
it's a wonderful, beautiful thing, and you immediately understand. And by the way, you probably the moment you taste it, your whole like being probably ingrains a big part of what that is. So next time you see that on a recipe, you're going to be like, oh yeah, those onions.
Yeah.
Cool. You already have a clear idea of what you're trying to point towards
Yeah.
now with your own. You already have an idea. No one taught you besides just letting you experience some.
Yeah. That seems key to what we're driving at with bagpipes here and drums, to be fair, too.
Big time.
Like
Anything you want to master.
the mastery. What did you call it before? Mastery driven pursuits.
Mastery-oriented pursuits.
Mastery-oriented
Sounds like something I would
pursuits,
say. Yeah. Something where
'Cause
we're trying to master it.
I know
Yeah.
that for me, and I know I've had students that it's no fault of their own, just like when they're new to bagpiping, it's like, okay, you're technically achieving the notes that are on the page, but that's not, there's something like they need to be in it for longer to know what they're
Yeah.
really going for, you know?
Yep.
And I've been there too. I'm not
Absolutely.
saying, I can remember, I know I've had this experience with other sub-idioms within bagpiping too, but the one I can remember very clearly, because it was pretty recent, is the strathspey. When I heard the right strathspey played on fiddle by the right player, something in my head clicked, and this was only a few years ago, and I went, "Oh, that's what we're going for?" So
Mhm.
it was like not even on bagpipes that finally I was like, "Oh, geez, how many strathspeys have I played in my life?" And I didn't actually know what the caramelizing, point was for this kind of song.
Yep. Totally. One of the ironic things about all this too is you only ever see the extreme outliers.
Hmm.
And so what that makes you think is that there is something particularly special or magical about that, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like when you see like LeBron James slam dunk from the foul line or something,
Yeah.
you're like, whoa, that guy is just a genetic freak. And sure, like you can't rule out the possibility that there's something somewhere in people's genes that predisposes them to be able to do magical, mastery-oriented things. I guess it's possible, but certainly with bagpiping, you see people with all sorts of different genetics get up on stage and do amazing things, right? So I'm not really buying that, but all we're seeing are the extreme outliers typically. That's typically who makes it up on the stage, or that's typically why they're there, is that they're the outliers. And so it definitely lends itself to believing that there's some sort of magical element that they have that we don't have. The magical element is probably the knee-jerk reaction way back at the beginning to become obsessed with that thing. It's like you said, for whatever reason, you rewound Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls and you watched it immediately another time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that reaction to it. So I'm probably not going to be selected to play young Jim Carrey in the biopic.
You know more about golf than I do, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when I was a child, I heard the story that Tiger Woods would sit in a high chair as a baby, like in the garage, and watch his dad putt.
Yeah.
There's an outlier, Tiger Woods, but there's a way that we can see that, like, oh, it's not like when he was 32 years old, they handed him a golf club and that was the first time and he just naturally could do it.
Right. Exactly.
He was obsessed, immersed for a very long time. I get the impression.
And what I think the controversial thing with Tiger Woods is like, was he immersed by choice there or was it advanced psyops? Yeah. Another great example is Roger Federer, who was amazing at a wide
Tennis, right?
variety of sports. What's fascinating about somebody, or not fascinating necessarily, but what's interesting about, like, Roger Federer is usually like one of the key generalists that you'll point to in sports, who's just great at every sport. And I've met people like that too. It's like, oh, this person's just great at every sport.
Hmm.
It's just a thing. And then meanwhile, you might have Tiger Woods is who you'd point to as like incredible at one specific sport. And then you find people that are amazing at every sport. But again, it's like, how do we get this? How do we get here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tiger Woods was definitely immersed his entire life in golf, wasn't he? Yeah.
Not to make this too personal and point straight at you or anything, Andrew Douglas, but I feel like maybe especially in North America, but maybe for all of us in general, you're a little bit of a unique one where you're from a bagpiping family and were exposed to really good bagpiping from a very early age. And I'm not trying to say
Sort
you
of,
have
although,
zero talent or anything like that, but
sort of, although for me, I had zero bagpiping in my life until I was maybe 6 or 7.
and some
Like
people
my
have it
dad,
even earlier, huh?
yeah, my dad stopped playing bagpipes for about 10 years, and then he picked them up again to play for my aunt's wedding. And I had no idea. But I also do kind of have the memory of becoming instantly infatuated when I heard my dad playing the first time. It was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I remember being instantly kind of drawn to it at age like 6 or 7 or whatever. But then you have other people where the bagpipes have probably been played at an extremely high level in the home from like the moment of birth.
Yeah. I'm hoping for that for my kids. We'll see. I've got my own dad used to say that every kid is a lotto ticket. You never know what you're gonna get, but got
And
bagpipes
that's a
playing
good
all the
thing.
time. We'll see.
Yeah, you never quite know what someone's going to latch onto
Yeah.
and become totally infatuated with.
Right. Yeah.
But that's where you get mastery, right? You have to have a genuine obsession's not the right word because it comes with all the negatives, but you have to have that genuine sort of infatuation with something. Like
Yeah.
that is step 1.
Yeah, I was thinking about this just yesterday because I was sitting in a weekly kickoff the week meeting that I have to do for my day job. And before the meeting started, just about everybody on the call was just having such an in-depth conversation about college football and just a lot of stats
Yeah.
were going back and forth and stuff. And I'm just flabbergasted. I cannot imagine holding this much information about this many players and the history of this many teams in my head all at one time. And I'm like, these guys must be studying for this before they meet up. And, no, they're not, And then I think, oh, I could probably if I could find a group of people this big to talk about some of my niche obsessions, we also would not need to study, It's like you're
Correct.
saying in the lesson, in this course in Commandment One, you say that things like the names of the last 3 pipe bands that won the World Pipe Band Championships, what major news outlets offer current information about the pipe band world, which countries have pipe band associations. You say things like this, you'd be able to answer them in the same way naturally if you're just immersed in that world. You wouldn't have to be like consciously memorizing this stuff.
Yeah. And you would also be unconsciously or subconsciously bothered by the fact that you didn't know, right? Oh, Glenfiddich, geez, I'm not even quite sure what that is. And that would bother you.
Mm-hmm.
It would make you feel really upset. Like, I love bagpiping. How do I not know about that? And then you would go research it, not because you're being asked, but just because you love bagpiping so much and you've never heard of this Glenfiddich thing before. And then you research it and you're like, look at this treasure trove.
Right.
Amazing
Yeah.
solo piping. Oh my God, that's so cool.
It would come naturally from your interest in it.
Yeah. You just wouldn't let it go. You would not let it slide. I was like that. I was definitely like that. Most pipers from my generation, like your Stuart Littles and your Stephen McCorders and like all these people of my generation. I mean, we could all play all the world CDs by heart, like every medley. And it's also why if someone plays the Argyllshire Gathering or if that's going to be added to the MSR, it's not a big deal for us because we already know those tunes because we played them 1,000 times. There might be a couple small changes, but you just know them because, that's what you did for a good time.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask like, how does Richard Parks get such an amazing sound out of Field Marshal Montgomery? And, I also kind of wondered that, although I shouldn't have, because one time he came on the dojo and he did a session for us about, reeds and how to get them to sound good and this thought process. And it instantly became apparent to me. This is what Richard does for fun. A lot of us after dinner, we relax in front of the television and maybe we watch some college football. That's a good example. Or maybe we watch Ace Ventura When Nature Calls twice
Two or three times. Yeah.
2 or 3 times. But I really did, and it's probably not actually true, but I really did get the impression that Richard might just sit down with a glass of whatever he enjoys drinking and just work with reeds, and that he actually is just really obsessed in the good kind of way with that thing. Yeah. When that becomes what you enjoy doing, then it becomes a lot easier to do. And I like reeds. Reeds are cool. I like when they sound good. I like pinching them sometimes and doing whatever to them and seeing what happens or whatever, but I don't think it's quite at that level. And so it's not a coincidence that he's able to achieve an incredible sound.
Now, you make a claim in this section about this, what you're interested in, what you're surrounding yourself in. You say, your musical environment is the single greatest correlate to your success.
Yeah, totally. It's the only thing that really is going to make you or break you.
And I appreciate that here you say your success. And I feel like maybe that was very intentional, because what success looks like for Richard Parks is different than what it looks like for me, I'm sure, and that has to do with not just like circumstance and things like that. It has to do with like Richard Parks is more interested in reeds in a different way than I am. So even within the sphere of bagpiping interest, I don't need to think to myself, well, I'm not as obsessed with reeds as Richard Parks is, so I guess I'm not a real bagpiper. I'll stop playing bagpipes. We can have other things that whatever success means to us, our musical environment is the single greatest correlate with achieving that. That seems like a strong claim, but I think I can dig what you're saying there.
It absolutely is. I mean, if you're going to be a great baseball player, you're going to spend most of your life hanging out with other great baseball players. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that plays professional sports that didn't spend their entire childhood hanging out with other great athletes in their discipline?
And something seems to come from it's not just like the hours spent doing the activity, but like if that's what you're thinking about all day, little insights are going to come that would only come as the result of hundreds of hours of mulling a thing over.
And you might not even only an outsider might even recognize them as insights.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The person doing it is just going to be so busy enjoying doing it. Yeah. Now I've talked a lot about the people at the top, right? But even for people in the middle or people who just do bagpiping for fun, the message here is you want to soak up what your interests are as much as reasonably possible. You just kind of want to soak it up. You want to have fun with it. You want to immerse yourself in it as much as reasonably possible. So maybe all your friends aren't going to be great pipers. And maybe you're not going to literally be obsessed every waking hour of the day, but what bagpipe music do you enjoy? Make sure you're enjoying it regularly and don't stop enjoying it and don't turn it off. Make sure these are the things that you're doing. And when you do have the chance to get together with pipers and hang out and talk piping, make sure that you do that. The immersion aspect and just thinking about things. What interests you? I think that's a good question. What interests you? And then make sure you go do that. I think there's a lot of people out there that are just scrambling to learn the tunes for their band. And they just scramble. It's like, I got to memorize this tune. I got to memorize this tune. Oh my God, I'm just scrambling. And then you miss the whole experience when things are like that. Just go out there and enjoy playing and deprioritize some of those strenuous tasks that you have to get done because those really will kind of come out in the wash if you just take an interest in and enjoy the process of doing things. I really do feel that way.
That seems to jive with my experience, as limited as it might be, to Andrew. I've got friends and family who aren't into bagpiping, and to them, they say it all sounds the same. And I understand that, especially with the drone element, I can understand why a person would feel that way. But for those of us who are interested in bagpiping, I feel like it wouldn't be crazy to say that there's enough variety out there in terms of what you can listen to and as well as what you can play, that you could find, if you're not feeling like super excited about what's right in front of you, a little exploration, I bet you'll find something that you can get healthily obsessed with.
Yes, exactly. And just follow wherever your interests take you.
This makes me think of the conversation we were having fairly recently, Andrew, where we were talking about how bagpipe maintenance is important. And so if you're like scrambling, like you were saying just now, to get ready for something, and you feel like you can't waste time on tightening up your joints because you just got to play or something like
Yeah.
that. It's like,
Yep.
well, no, that's the waste of time. Take the time to prep your instrument and everything else
Yes.
will be like so much better. I wonder if similarly we feel like, especially maybe in certain parts of the year with competitions coming up and stuff like that, we feel like I can't waste time looking through that tune book or crawling around the internet to find cool videos or whatever it is. I need to memorize my MSR.
Yeah.
And maybe that's okay for a while, but if that's all we ever do, maybe it'll like kind of take the magic out of this thing that
Totally.
we love, you know?
And it's worth the risk, right? It's worth a little bit of risk. Okay, maybe you'll make a tiny little note mistake in an MSR at some point, right? And again, I'm speaking at the lower levels. You can't be quite as nonchalant at the high levels, okay? But at the lower levels, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you'll screw something up, you know, but you'll also be you'll be 3 times better as a player overall, you know. And usually the little tiny screw ups aren't a big deal. It's like the big screw ups that are a big deal. And man, I feel like there's a lot of big screw ups that happen just for general lack of awareness of the basic sort of cultural things. Yeah. That you'll know if you take an interest.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this is coming full circle to like caramelized onions kind of situation, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
man, if you had to choose between another session of obsessing over the third part of the march of the MSR or something like that versus some pleasant immersion activity, which it's rarely that, you know, usually you can be immersing yourself on the drive to work or something like that, you know. If the result of that is that you become a more holistically solid player, also excited and having fun with it, you're going to not make more mistakes. You're going to play better than ever as a result. It's like if you wanted to read about caramelizing onions versus just cook a bunch of stuff, the cooking stuff and having fun with cooking is going to expose you to methods and things, you know, subtle and otherwise, that are going to make you a better chef. And then you're going to, it's going to come out better.
Yep. It's so true. I feel like I haven't done like a really poetic job of explaining it, but yes, the lower down something is in the pecking order, or the closer to the foundation something is, the more leverage it brings you. You use the example of bagpipe maintenance, right? That's very low down. It's very close to the foundation. We got to assemble our pipes well. And we've got to set the pipes up to be efficient. That's way down. And it's boring. It's not that interesting. You want to get to playing. But that foundational work that you do gives you so much leverage further on down the chain. So the more time that you're willing to spend getting your maintenance just so, the dividends that you get are much more than, let's say, if you're just working on the steadiness of your blowing. Now, steadiness of your blowing is really important, okay? But maintenance is way more important because of the amount of leverage it gets you. For example, can you blow steadily if your joints are loose and so air is leaking all over the place? Answer, if you can, it requires far greater skill. And then basically, no, you won't be able to blow steady if your pipes are leaking air. So it's all about leverage. But there's something that's even lower down, closer to the foundation than maintaining your bagpipes, and even lower down than practicing your rhythm, right? It's immersion. It's taking an interest. It's being fascinated. It's like loving the thing.
I feel really excited anytime this comes up, Andrew, because it sounds so easy and so pleasant.
Yeah.
And so to be also told that it'll make a positive difference, it's like, awesome. That's great news.
Yeah. It's not always easy. Sometimes I think I find bagpipe students who really don't have an interest. For example, you could talk about how good Callum Beaumont was at the Glenfiddich, and that's something that really just naturally interests me. And I think for some people, I don't know.
Might look it up, might not.
Yeah. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's like, geez, okay. And maybe they're not interested in that because they just love pipe band music. I don't know. Or they just love session music. And that would be one thing. But yeah, what are you really interested in? I do think you sometimes find people who their real interest is just in the pageantry of it all and not actually in the music of it.
Yeah.
You do see that sometimes in activities like ours.
And that's okay, right?
And it's totally okay.
It's just a different focal point. I used to feel upset about that sometimes, you know, just be like, you're not here for the right reasons. But who gets to decide which reasons are right, you know? Like, that's cool too.
Yeah, the pageantry sells, you know? Like,
it does.
That's something a lot of people are interested in for some reason.
You see all these kilts hanging back here.
Yeah.
Man. I would play gigs not in a kilt if I could. But that's just me.
Totally. But it's like really weird. It's really
Yeah.
weird.
Well,
Really weird.
yeah.
And for me, I just don't get it. I don't have any interest in it.
And I'm not judging. It's cool. If that's what you're into, it's cool. But yeah, how many times I get calls for gigs where the question is not what will you play, but what will you wear? And
Right.
there's a little part of me that dies inside. I go, I'll wear the costume that you want me to wear, because that's the word they use, and okay, I'll do that,
What costume will you wear?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's sort of the important thing for a lot of people, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, that's commandment number 1, isn't it? The idea that immersion, it's the single greatest correlate to success that you're going to have in any mastery-oriented craft. By the way, one of my favorite mastery-oriented crafts to think about is chess. Like chess people?
Yeah, chess people.
Like my brother's a bit of a chess person, right? They'll genuinely watch. They won't even watch the people play chess.
Yeah.
They'll just watch the pieces, and they do it all digitally now.
Yeah, the
And
diagrams.
They'll watch the
Sometimes they don't
diagrams
even
go
watch.
by.
It's not even the movement. Sometimes it's just the letter
letters.
and number thing, which it takes me a long time to decipher what's going on there. But some of these people can read that so fluently, they are seeing the action.
Exactly. And did they go to school for that? No. Like
Not
you just
usually, at least.
Not usually. I mean, you read chess books, and that's part of the way they communicate stuff to you in chess books. And then, the problem solving of it, and I'm not sure what it is, but they just get into it and they really understand it. And it's fascinating. Like I like chess. Chess is cool. I'm like a parade chess player.
I was just feeling the same thing. I was just realizing
I like
that
it
about myself. Yeah.
I like it. It's cool. I enjoy playing chess regularly. I even enjoy reading a little bit about it and trying to learn a little bit about it. But there's like a limit to how deep my interest is willing to go there. And so I'm okay.
That's so funny, Andrew. I've never made that connection before. Like what you're saying before about having students who, like you mentioned Callum Beaumont's performance, and they'd be like, oh, cool. Maybe not even be interested in watching it. Like, no, that's me with chess. I'm interested in sitting down to play a game of chess. Tell me about the masters. That's fine, but I might not look it up, whatever. And the pageantry of it, I don't know if you can see, I've got 2 or 3 chess sets on a shelf there because I think the pieces are pretty. That's why. I'll admit that. That's why I have those chess sets. I think they look nice. That's all there is to it.
There's some sort of like pageantry layer. There's that pageantry layer of a lot of these activities.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to play basketball? Do you love basketball? Or do you just love looking and acting like basketball players look and act?
Maybe I like the way my arms look in a jersey, and I think that Air Jordans are really cool shoes.
And girls like basketball players, so I'm going to dress up like a basketball player, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Girls definitely, they fairly impartial towards bagpipe players. We found over the years, but okay.
Empirically proven.
But dressing up like a bagpipe player didn't really work in high school,
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of ironic because by the time I was in high school proper, I played bagpipes all the time. And we actually sometimes wore kilts to school.
Oh, yeah. Well, the high school I went to had a pipe band. That's where I learned to play.
Ours was like a prep school that was based like heavily in Scottish tradition. Yeah. So you could wear your kilt to school if you wanted. And no one thought it was strange. If anything, people kind of thought it was badass. So I don't know what I was talking about there. Okay.
Well, that's Commandment 1 then.
That's Commandment 1.
Immerse thyself.
Yes.
Hey everybody, Andrew Douglas here from the Piper's Dojo, and I just want to say thanks so much for listening to today's iteration of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, it would be super helpful to us and to a lot of bagpipers out there trying to find us. If you could give us a top-notch review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast, particularly Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and things like that, your review would be really, really helpful. So if you have a moment today, definitely go over there and help us out. Other than that, until we meet again on the podcast or somewhere else, thanks again for listening.